Leon Trotsky was born in a town called Yanovka, which was in Russia but is now present-day Ukraine. He was born into a family of wealthy Jewish farmers on November 7th, 1879. He was born with the name of Lev Davidovich Bronstein, but that was later changed. Here he learned how to speak English, French, and German. Leon Trotsky went to school in the cosmopolitan and diverse port city Odessa, which is shown here in this image either from the late 1800s or early 1900s. Here he met a group of others, mainly students, who were determined to overthrow the Tsar. They taught him about socialism, which he became very interested in. They also taught him about public speaking, which helped him gain his skills. Leon Trotsky admitted that later in life that the registration books where he lived were not kept particularly accurate at all, and sometimes events would be recorded after they actually happened. This caused Leon Trotsky to lie about his age when he learned he was not officially old enough to attend high school. He made a second birth certificate saying he was a year older. This caused him to have two birth certificates, one with his official age and one with the age observed by his family. So not only did Leon Trotsky end up with two names, he ended up with two birthdays too. Later in life, Trotsky became a Soviet revolutionary, Marx theorist, and a politician with a strain of Marxist known as Trotskyism.
In 1917, Trotsky headed back to Russia. He joined the Bolsheviks and played a decisive role in the communist takeover. His first part was as a foreign commissioner, where he negotiated peace terms with Germany. Trotsky spent the majority of his time developing theories on the origin and consequences of the war and battling with other socialists on the correct line to take. Trotsky advocated various international anti-war positions and supported the Russian government. Trotsky worked with the Swiss Socialist Party, prompting it to adopt an international resolution. The most significant of the chapters is devoted to Trotsky's differences with Vladimir Lenin. Although both opposed the war and foresaw tremendous revolutionary implications with it, Trotsky wanted a revolutionary United States of Europe to emerge, whereas Lenin was devoted to the Russian implications of the struggle. Trotsky was deported to Spain from France for anti-war activities, then deported to the U.S. in 1916 and left in 1917. His ship was intercepted by British naval officers, and he was denied in Nova Scotia for a month.
Leon was then deported to remote Soviet Central Asia, where he lived in an internal exile for a year before being forever banished to the USSR by Stalin. In 1898, he was arrested for his revolutionary activities and he was sent to prison. Then later in 1900, he was exiled to Siberia. In 1902, he escaped to England using a forged passport under the name Leon Trotsky. This is where the old name Lev Bronstein plays in. During his stay in London, he did a lot of collaborating with the Bolshevik revolutionary Vladimir Lenin. But then later he ended up siding with the Menshevik fractions that advocated a democratic approach to socialism. And then again, with the outbreak of the Russian Revolution in 1905, Trotsky returned to Russia and was again exiled to Siberia when the revolution yet again collapsed. In 1907, he again escaped. During the entire next decade, he was expelled from a series of countries because of his radicalism. He lived in Switzerland, Paris, Spain, and New York City before eventually returning to Russia at the outbreak of the revolution in 1917. Trotsky played a very important leading role in the Bolsheviks' seizure of power, while conquering most of the Petrograd before Lenin's triumph return in November. This is Joseph Stalin, who was the head leader of the Soviet Union. He outlawed any opposition to him and forced Trotsky and his followers into exile in 1928. Trotsky was sent to Kazakhstan, and then to Turkey, and then to France and Norway. However, he didn't stay long in these countries at all. This was due to the pressure he felt by Joseph Stalin in being too close to the Soviet Union's borders. This just led to him being put under house arrest. Trotsky was placed under house arrest given the fact that Stalin had sentenced him to death. Although after his house arrest, he was grateful when he was rescued by an invasion to live in Mexico. While he was in Mexico, Trotsky was free to travel, he was allowed to write, He was also allowed to express his ideas and theories in any way he wanted. This includes planning and researching what was going on in the Soviet Union at the time. During his stay in this country, he founded the Fourth International. The Fourth International was a communist organization that was originally meant to be an oppositionist force to Stalinism. Also, while he was in Mexico, he became a very prominent and well-known personality, and he actually often mingled with famous people like Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo, and Andre Breton. His house was often filled with visitors and tourists that wanted to hear his ideas and theories.
Here's some information about the death of Leon Trotsky. On August 20th, 1940, at roughly 6 o'clock p.m., Cruz Verde Hospital in Mexico City received an emergency phone call from the police office. At first, paramedics thought that Trotsky was dead, but after examining him, they realized that he was still alive, and so he was rushed to the hospital. 40 minutes before the call was received, a visitor arrived at Leon Trotsky's house. His name was Frank Jackson. Jackson went into Trotsky's studio and closed the door behind him. A few seconds later, Trotsky's wife rushed into the studio and saw Trotsky on the ground. Jackson was carrying an ice axe concealed in the overcoat, and when Trotsky sat down at the studio table, he stood up and took the weapon out and hit Trotsky's head. Trotsky did not lose consciousness right away. He was actually able to speak and tell his bodyguards to spare Jackson's life for him to be able to tell his story. Because of the severity of the injury, there was a 90% chance that he would die. On the morning of August 21st, Trotsky's health deteriorated greatly, and he was not able to recover consciousness. His breathing became fast and erratic. Trotsky was declared dead at 7:25 p.m. on August 21st, 1940, 25 hours and 35 minutes after being attacked by Jackson. Trotsky's assassination was a really big event in Mexico's neurosurgery history because it had never been seen before. He was also a really big figure of the 20th century because he was an essential character in the construction of the Soviet Union. As for Frank Jackson, who killed him, he was later found to be a Spanish communist named Jaime Ramon Mercader del Rio Hernandez, and he had really important connections with the GPU, Stalin's secret police. 3 months prior, Stalin had attempted an unsuccessful assassination attempt by storming his villa. Stalin decided to send Jackson to go and to try to kill him yet again.